Oh, okay. Well, that was weird. Uh, oh. I'm alright. I'm okay. Oh, man. I just passed out there for a while. Oh, man, I don't remember anything. Oh, I was, I think I was like digging around in some of my boxes, the stuff from the move, and I found my old Power Rangers morph, right? So I put it on, and then just nothing. And now I don't know, my head's all cloudy and just. Oh, what do we have here? Guys, look! It's the greatest arc in all of One Piece, the Davy back fight. Oh my god, so many awesome moments, right? Best arc, hands down, right? Marineford, Dressrosa, even Wano has nothing on the Davy back. And you know what? I have to personally say, Foxy is not just my favorite character in One Piece, but also my personal role model. I mean, look at the man right there. Look at that head. Look at that nose. Look at those spiked boxing gloves. I mean, that's awesome, right? I mean, Luffy was barely able to take him down, and that was with the power of the afro, right? But you know what? Foxy, I mean, people just don't talk about him as much, like Doflamingo, Katakuri, Kaido, Blackbeard. No, Foxy was better than all of them. Okay, I can only keep that up for so long. Hi everybody, how you doing? Tekking and Barry back again. So today we're going to be talking about Sanji becoming a cruel, heartless, emotionless soldier of evil! Which, for a while there, Sanji's been having this crisis of self for quite a few chapters ever since he started feeling that tingly sensation. If you've been experiencing a tingly sensation with your raid suit canister, please call a doctor and cease using it. So yeah, I mean, the idea is that ever since Sanji used the raid suit, his body's been feeling weird, and he started to have this fear that he's becoming like his siblings, okay? So like Ichiji, Niji, and Yonji, where he's going to turn into a cold, heartless, lacking any empathy soldier of science for the Germa. And so that's why he's like, okay, I gotta leave the battlefield, okay? So he stopped using the raid suit, and he ran away, and Queen was chasing after him. Now, I just assumed that, this is an interesting dynamic. I like what Oda's going for here. I like the idea that Sanji's having this crisis of self, but I thought there wasn't going to be anything to it. I thought Sanji was going to, yes, truly awaken his, body, his exoskeleton, because we saw that. We saw him being crushed by the giant snake brachiosaur technique that Queen was using, and his leg and everything was, all broken, and he was able just to, knock it back into place. But I didn't think it was going to affect his personality, and the reason I didn't think it was going to affect his personality is quite simply that would kind of screw up the whole narrative of the story, right? We're in the final stretch of One Piece, or we're getting into the final saga of One Piece coming up here. I mean, after Wano, yeah, there's going to be a few more islands the Straw Hats are going to visit, like Elbath and Lodestar and stuff, but eventually we're going to get to Laugh Tale. That might very well be the next saga of the story. It would be very, very weird if, getting into the final stretch of the story, all of a sudden, one of the main characters turns evil, I mean, I guess you could do a story arc revolving around Sanji's, his emotions change, and he has to struggle with being a Germa, and, the Straw Hats have to help him, but we kind of already just had a story arc revolving around Sanji, so that'd be a little weird, to focus on that. So I was just like, oh yeah, Oda wants to show us, Sanji's perspective there, the terror and the fear and the anxiety he feels from becoming like his brothers. He doesn't want to become a Germa. But of course, there's not going to be anything to it, right? Well, in the last chapter, we had the scene where Sanji was running through the pleasure hall. Women Trouble is the name of, Black Maria's brothel. Black Maria has been defeated by Robin, of course, but, the brothel's still there. So he's running through the halls trying to get away from Queen, just kind of lost in thought. He's not really paying attention to his surroundings. And there was a woman in the hall, and she was just a geisha from the mainland. She had nothing to do with Kaido or Orochi. They're just hiding out there in the pleasure hall waiting for the battle to end. Probably very, very terrifying for them, I have to say. And, just to be a civilian in the middle of all this. And then Sanji ran past her, and then, he was kind of lost in thought, and the next thing he knows, the woman is on the ground, bleeding out, and he's just like, whoa, what happened? I don't have any memory of what happened there. Did I, lose consciousness and, attack her? Even if it wasn't, physically just, I'm gonna, punch her. Even if it was just, Sanji's running through the hallway and just, hits her by accident, that would still mess with Sanji, right? That would be no, I can never hit a woman. That's something that, I cannot still live and with that on my conscience, okay? And so then he calls Zoro for like a murder pact, which is like, okay. And the fact that Zoro, like a lot of people were commenting on that, like just the fact that Zoro just agreed to it like that. I mean, did they discuss this before? I don't think they did, but it's like I said in the review, it's like they've been, on the Straw Hat crew for a while now. They've had a lot of really tough fights. Yeah, Zoro and Sanji might have that rivalry and they might have like back and forth or whatever. But at the end of the day, when one of them is serious, they can kind of sense that. And it's like, okay, so Sanji's calling Zoro when Zoro's in the middle of pitched combat with King. Like, so Zoro already knows, like, okay, this is something serious for him to call me. And then to say those words of like, after this battle is over, if I'm not like myself, if I'm somebody else, if I'm acting differently, I want you to just like, slice me down, cut me down and just like end it. And Zoro was like, okay, he wouldn't say this as a joke. He wouldn't say this to mess with me or anything like that. If that's what you want, I'll do that, right? So, I mean, like, I don't know if they have discussed this before, but man, that just shows, like, I guess, kind of a weird way to do, like, yes, I'll accept this murder pact, Sanji. I'll tell you what, it's not, it's very subversive when it comes to a lot of other, anime and like the tropes that you find therein, where it's just like, Sanji calls up Zoro, just like, hey, I don't know what's going on with me, man. My personality's changing. If I'm not like I used to be at the end of this battle, I want you to just cut me down, man. It would be a normal situation in other manga, be like, no, Sanji, you're my friend, and we're all friends, and we're all Nakama, and we're all Straw Hats. There has to be a way. We'll find a way to save you. No, Zoro doesn't do any of that bullshit. He's just like, all right, well, if you want me to cut you down, man, my sword is always available. Like, it just, like, yeah, so I'm like, whatever, okay. And so Sanji's like, okay, and he, turns off the Dendemushi, and he's, prepares to fight Queen. So in the review, I said, like, well, it's possible that maybe the woman wasn't attacked by Sanji. Maybe it was a situation where, like, a piece of rubble fell from the ceiling or something else happened. And then I was like, Sanji just was so lost in thought. He was so, preoccupied with, like, freaking out. Basically, yes, having an anxiety attack, having an existential crisis, thinking about, like, oh my god, I don't want to be a Germa. I don't want to just be like them. I mean, it's really cool to have the exoskeleton and everything, and I guess I can't break any bones, but I don't want to hurt women. That would be horrible. And then he's just like, wait, what happened, So I just, maybe it's like something fell, and so Sanji's just, like leading it to that. One of the big things that I did not notice when I reviewed the chapter at all, and that's the crazy thing, because Oda likes to do this shit. He likes to do it a lot. He likes to put little tiny differences in the art, little tiny like things that you might not notice on the first read through. So, I try to do this. I don't do it every single week, but I really need to start. I really need to start just looking at every single page, every single panel, and just go over it with like a fine-tooth comb. Because in Oda's, art style, you gotta do that, because he puts stuff in the background. Like, remember the whole thing with page 1's tail? Like, page 1, he was a Spinosaur, and so his tail was like a reptile's tail at first, and then Oda changed it out to have like a gill on it, because, Spinosaurs could actually swim. And so, I never noticed that. Most people never noticed that. But, obviously One Piece, the most popular manga in the world right now, a lot of people are going to be reading it, and eventually be like, hey, that tail is a little different from the last time you drew it, Oda-sensei. He's like, I'm so glad you noticed. But yeah, this was only in a few panels, and that, you know what? That is something I do have to commend Oda that he does. Because whenever something like that does occur, like Sanji's eyebrows switching sides to make it look more like his brother's, for example, this is Yonji's face, Yonji's eyebrows, the way they twirl, Sanji's twirl in the opposite direction, and so in the last chapter, they twirled, in the direction that his siblings twirl. So that right there was like, okay, there might actually be something to this now. Now, still does not mean anything, because remember, Sanji's body was already undergoing transformations. Like, we already knew that. Sanji already developed the exoskeleton just like his brothers did, so it's like, okay, having a physical change like your exoskeleton or your eyebrows switching doesn't necessarily mean his personality is going to change as well, but it's an interesting note. And the thing I wanted to commend Oda for was he doesn't draw attention to it. It's not like it's a double-page spread or even a panel where, I mean, they might do it in the anime. I'm feeling like they might do it in the anime where Sanji's, like, freaking out, and maybe the anime will, like, focus on his eyebrows and are just like, and then it'll, like, switch sides or something. But in the manga, it's just like, it happened, you know, if you noticed it, good on you. If you didn't, then you didn't, which is me. But yeah, so something like that occurred, and I'm just thinking, okay, now that's fascinating right there. So now that we have a little bit more believability with this, I still don't think anything's conclusive. It's not 100% or anything like that. But let's talk about this. Let's assume that this were to actually happen. Let's assume that Sanji, you know, it's not just in his head, it actually is occurring where his lineage factor is shifting. I made a video about this a couple of months ago talking about Sanji becoming a cyborg. This was like when the first changes of his body began to show in the manga. So go and check that video out for, like, you know, the full backstory there and a couple of my theories. But in that video, I threw out there like, oh no, he's probably going to be the same Sanji. He's just going to get the best of both worlds. He's going to have a really cool exoskeleton, and he's going to have a raid suit, and he's just going to be himself. Okay, now the raid suit, let's just start with that, because that's something else I missed. Actually, hold on. Somebody sent me this a while ago because I was going to do a little segment like things Tekking missed in the chapter, so let me just play that really quick.
But other things Tekking missed in the chapter.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. But, you know, things Tekking missed in the chapter. Sanji's eyebrow. Also, Sanji can turn invisible without this now, all right? Which, in the context of the story, that actually does make sense. And when I was reading it, I actually just completely... I saw that scene, but I misconstrued what it was, because there was the scene where Sanji breaks the raid suit, and then Queen's looking at him like, no! And then he calls Zoro and tells him about the murder pact and everything. And then Sanji, in the last scene, apparently just disappears in front of Queen, but then he reappears using, you know, Diablo Jambe and, like, hell memories and, like, you know, lights Queen on fire. I thought it was the standard anime trope, which was, you've seen this before a million times. It happens like a bunch in Dragon Ball. It happens in Bleach. We've all seen the scene, right? I can even act it out for you right now. Hold on a second. Let me grab a weapon. Okay, here's a broom. Okay. All right. So here's how it goes, right? You got the protagonist, who will be played by me, and you got, like, the villain, you know, whatever. And it's like the protagonist goes up, and he's just like, I will defeat you. And the villain is like, you cannot. And then, oh no, the protagonist disappeared right in front of me. Where did he go? And then, boom! That's when the protagonist shows up behind the dude and, like, smacks him right in the face, you know, full power, you know? We've all seen it before, like, you can't defeat me, zip. It's like, oh, where did he go? He's fast, boom! And I thought that's what it was. I thought Sanji was just using Soru or Geppo or Skywalker or whatever, and he's just moving really fast, and he zips up into the air, and Queen's like, where did he go? He's above me, boom! And then, you know, by the time Queen figures it out. But no, what makes more sense is Sanji just turned invisible without the use of the suit. And when I say that makes sense, it does, because we've seen this in Totland. The Germa siblings are able to use their various elements and their augmentations without their raid suits. Niji was able to use that technique, Henry Needle, because Niji's Dengeki blue, he's lightning or electricity blue. And so he was able to use that technique like Henry Needle on Sanji without his raid suit on, okay? Ichiji would be able to do the same thing with his, you know, fire, his combustion, and Yonji's ability is not really an element, it's like body modifications, like, so he has like his winch green and stuff like that. Reiju has poison, of course, she's able to do that kind of stuff without a raid suit. It might be a situation where, like, the raid suit augments their already natural abilities, you know, so like Niji would be able to create way more electricity with his raid suit than he ever would be just with his body. All right, so with that being the case, Sanji would be able to go invisible now, but probably not for as long as, you know, having the raid suit on, or he has to train with it a little bit, okay? But even with training, he wouldn't be able to be in, like the raid suit might be, like, indefinite. Like, you could stay invisible for maybe hours. In this case, it's maybe, because it only seemed to last a couple of seconds for him to go invisible, and then when he was using Hell Memories, I think he was very visible when he did that. Maybe he wasn't, I don't know. But yeah, Sanji has now realized his dream. He, with the power of science, he is able to turn invisible now without the use of a raid suit or whatever. But at what cost, ladies and gentlemen? At what cost? Well, let's discuss that. So let's say Sanji really did hit that woman, okay? And so he did it, and he's like, his body's like in a transition period now where he's just like phasing in and out of his own consciousness. So there's like Sanji, and kind of like a split personality or like split emotions, sort of like a Cavendish Hakuba sort of situation we find ourselves in right now, where he's running and he's like, he knows he's Sanji, and he's like, he's a good person and he's very chivalrous and everything, but then he's just like, and then he just wakes up and he's like, what happened last night? You know, something like that. what would happen with the character after this point, because Sanji is very serious with his chivalry. If he was the one to strike that geisha and he made that announcement to Zoro, that wasn't empty. That was not like him just messing around, right? Like, if it turns out he really did do that, then Zoro will cut him down, and Sanji would allow him to do that, even if it was just an accident, like a piece of rock or something hitting her in the face, and like nobody else was around to witness it. That's another thing too. Like the other geishas mentioned, like you were the only one with her, so you had to be the one. So something else could happen. Like, she could wake back up after she's unconscious, and she'd be like, "Oh yeah, he was running towards me, but then I felt something from above hit me, like a rock or something." So it could have been a situation like that. But even if he didn't do it, there's still that fear. There's still that terror that Sanji might become a member of the Germa. So if you're going to go along with that plot thread, I would say the best way to do it is to have Sanji, realize that he was innocent with the geisha, and then defeat Queen. But even after the fighting is over, and even after, the Straw Hats are victorious, Kaido and Big Mom are taken care of, and then they're having the festival feast, and Zoro's like, "Oh, are you any different so I could cut you down?" It's like, "No, I feel fine." There might still be that voice in the back of Sanji's head, that fear of like, okay, I didn't do anything this time, but my body is still very weird. It might be like Sanji might have a serious complex he might develop. Like, he's afraid to use any sort of like the Germa tech, like every time he goes invisible or something, he might feel like, he's one step closer to his brothers. I don't know if any of the Straw Hats or any of the characters are going to mention the case with the eyebrows. Like, if that's going to be a situation like, "Hey, Sanji, your eyebrows are a little weird there. That's a little strange." They might flux back and forth, which is really funny to me personally. Because for so long, in the first half of this story, for like the first, 13, 14 years of One Piece's serialization, that was like one of the big mysteries of the One Piece world. Like, what's up with Sanji's other eye that he doesn't keep, under his hair? And so after the time skip, Oda just changed it, and just like, oh, okay, so it wasn't a big deal. It's not like Sanji had the Rinnegan or anything like that. It's just his eyebrows are asymmetrical. And so that wasn't a big deal, but now Oda is actually making his eyebrows a big deal. So this might actually turn into a thing that, like, the fans have to pay attention to in the future. Like, I'm not going to say it's a total, like, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing with Sanji, but it might mean that, like, when his eyebrows, if they do flux back and forth, that could be a hint for Oda to tell us how that fight's gonna happen. So, like, right now, Sanji's eyebrows are in the direction of his brothers. So maybe in this fight with Queen, Sanji will be a lot more callous. He'll be a lot more brutal than we're normally used to him seeing. Like, he might use Hell Memories and light Queen on fire, and he's on the ground. He's just like, oh! Like, let's say Queen is defeated. Like, he's probably not going to be defeated from this attack, but let's say he would be. And then Sanji, in, like, a fit of, like, rage, burns Queen to the ground. Queen's on the ground, shard, and he's kind of like, "I yield." And then, Sanji just goes up to him, just like, "You stupid dinosaur! Ah!" Just like, doing that kind of crap. And then Sanji comes out of it, and his eyebrows go back to normal, and he just, like, blood just covered in his legs. Queen is just like a pile of mush on the ground. There's like brachio guts everywhere, and Sanji's just like, oh no. Like, what am I becoming, right? So it might be like that. And if that continues throughout the next story arcs and whatever, there could be a moment where Sanji gets into a fight with, like, a giant at Elbath, or if he fights, like, Vasco Shot on Blackbeard's crew or whatever. And there could be a scene where Oda could be like, okay, normal eyebrows, and then the next panel, reverse eyebrows, and be like, oh, that means Sanji's about to go ham on Vasco Shot, like, so he could do that. It could be a thing where Sanji still retains, because he has a lot of willpower, he has a lot of his own, like, and also remember, Haki basically is will, and the Germa siblings didn't seem to have it. I don't think it was ever confirmed that the Germa siblings had Haki, armament or observation. I'll check, let me know if I'm wrong on that fact, but they didn't use it, and so, because also, they kind of, it would make sense if they don't, because Haki just means ambition or will, and if they are just, like, the puppets of Judge, if Judge, like, created them or genetically modified them to listen to his orders and not have, like, their own, like, not think for themselves and remove their empathy, it would make sense why they wouldn't be able to use Haki. So maybe the fact Sanji does have Haki, has that strong willpower, if he didn't have that, maybe he would be taken over by the Germa modifications and he would just become a warrior of science like his brothers. But because of his hockey, he's able to kind of fight that. And so he's still himself, he's still chivalrous, but occasionally when his eyebrows twirl the opposite direction, he will be a lot more callous, a lot more brutal. Not to the point with his brothers, but he might lose himself in like a rage, kind of something like that. I think that would probably be better than changing like his fundamental personality, like he would harm a woman, which is the complete opposite. Like Sanji mentioned it, like, if I'm gonna do that, then just cut me down, Zoro, right? So we really can't go forward with the story. Like, I really don't think Sanji would want to even continue with the Straw Hats or even continue living if that's how he was. And so that's the problem that kind of presents itself, right, with the story. It's either like, okay, if he does become like his brothers and he did harm a woman, then Sanji's just not going to be in the rest of this story because he wouldn't want to be, but, we have to do it another way where it's like, okay, maybe we can do this thing where his willpower can fight against that, but he still has the modifications and he still might be prone to, like, lack of empathy and, like, a more rage kind of moment, but maybe he can suppress it, maybe he can learn, like, I don't know, Zen meditation, like, and he can learn to, like, fight it or something and control it, kind of like a werewolf transformation in, like, a lot of movies and a lot of fiction where, like, the person that becomes the werewolf must, like, learn to control it, or, like, Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk, that kind of relationship. Something like that, I don't know. Maybe we'll have evil Sanji. Maybe we'll have a moment like with like Hollow Ichigo or something. Actually, I have it right here. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, I have it right here. Ha ha ha. Hollow Ichigo to Matt Bonkai from Johnny Young Bosch. A couple years ago, the Elite Ace went to Yumacon, where Johnny Young Bosch was at, and he got this in a sign for me, and he sent it to me. So thanks to Ace. And also, yeah, it might be like Hollow Sanji, right? Where Sanji's like fighting Queen, and in the moment he sees like his Germa counterpart, like Stealth Black from like the comic strip shows up in his vision or something, and Stealth Black Sanji's like wearing the outfit and everything and the sunglasses and the raid suit, and he's just like, why are you acting that way? Just, give away to your emotions. They'll do nothing but hold you back. Come to the dark side, Sanji. We have cookies. And Sanji's just like, no, I'll never be like you. And it's like this weird kind of split sort of thing that we have to deal with. Kind of like Usopp and Sage King, but like dialed up even more. That's another cliche that happens a lot in Battle Shonen. Happened in Bleach. It happens in Black Clover, where like the main character, one of the main characters, have like an evil demon or devil or hollow or something inside of them, and it's just like they have to, like, Naruto and the Nine-Tailed Fox in the earlier parts of Naruto, that kind of stuff. And we've yet to really have that in One Piece, other than Cavendish and Hakuba. And it's not a good and evil relationship, but the Sage King and Usopp relationship, which we haven't even heard from Sage King in a while. So I don't even know if that's the thing. That might have just been like a one-off joke for Oda. But if we do that, though, if we're gonna have that in the story, I mean, Oda has pretty much tackled every other aspect of fiction he's included in One Piece at some point. So we can include that as well, and then Sanji just has to struggle with that for the rest of the story. And then that could, do you think this is the last power-up the Straw Hats are going to get before the end of the story? Personally, my view on the final battle that the Straw Hats will have to face is they will all have to fight against Blackbeard's crew individually. They won't be able to help each other out. Well, maybe they might be able to help each other out, but they won't have, like, the rebellion. Like, they won't have, like, the samurai backing them or some large group. It's just going to be Straw Hat crew versus Blackbeard's crew, and that'll be it. And that'll be the last final big boss, big bad that the Straw Hats are going to have to face off against. I guess you could always say, what if Rox comes back and revives or something like that? That could always, or he was never dead. That could be a situation. But I feel like the Straw Hats are going to unlock one more big power-up after Wano for the end of the story, right? Like, Luffy might very well unlock, like, his awakening here, but then he has to learn, like, new techniques with his awakening. So it would be interesting for Oda to open up a new possibility. Like, if he does do that dynamic, like, at the end of Wano, Sanji can turn invisible, and he can do all that, but also he awakens, like, this dark personality inside of him, and he's sort of going to struggle with that for the next few story arcs. But then when we get to the final story arc and the final battle that Sanji has to go up against, eventually, at some point in this story, we're going to have the last battle with Luffy and Zoro and Sanji. And the last battle that he has, let's just say it is Vasco shot, right, with Blackbeard. Could be someone else. It could be, you know, I don't know, Lafitte or somebody. But let's just say Vasco shot because he's, you know, we don't know much about him. You know, his final battle, he's like, he manages to conquer the Germa inside of him. He manages to conquer his inner hollow, and he unlocks his final form, and then he fights, and then he wins. Like, that could be, like, the opening, you know, the opening salvos, so to speak, for the final transformation Sanji's gonna go through, right? Could be. Same thing with Zoro. Like, I made videos on, like, the Nidai and, like, the Shodai Katetsu. Like, Zoro might get those swords, and that might be his final thing, and Luffy's awakening will be his final thing, right? And so, maybe Usopp awakening Haki, Robin's devil form, you know? It's like Oda is, like, setting things up right here where, like, yeah, the Straw Hats have these new abilities, like Robin's devil, but not able to actually use them very well, or they get tired very easily, and that's like, okay, it shows potential for growth for the final part of this story, is what I'm saying. But anyway, yeah, so that's the video. Let me know down below what you think. I don't think I missed anything else in the chapters. Sanji's eyebrow and then turning invisible. But yeah, now that the fight, let's see here, we have Hawkins' fight taken care of. Big Mom's fight is kind of starting anew with her soul powers, and Kid and Law are there. I guess Drake is fighting Apu, and then we have the whole thing with Yamato and Fuga and the rest of the numbers. So there are some other fights going on right now, but I would feel like this is the perfect time, and there's a break next week, but this would be the perfect time to set up just do the Sanji Queen fight now. And then do all of it, and then do the Zoro fight after that, and then maybe in between you could have little scenes of like Yamato and the numbers, or Drake and Apu, and you have scenes like that. And then after those fights are over, then Big Mom versus Kid and Law, finally, like we see the whole thing there, and then Luffy versus Kaido, and that'll be the capstone, that'll be the finisher, okay? Well, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yes, of course, that means we have a new episode of the new hit sensation on the channel. We have Dinosaur Facts! Roar! Roar, 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 roar. All right, let's just do the T-Rex now. Let's just do the T-Rex. I know, there's 1,000,001 different dinosaur species out there. There's so many that don't get the credit that they deserve because of, like, the T-Rex. But I figured, let's just get it out of the way, like, second episode, all right? The Megalosaurus and then the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Okay, the Tyrannosaurus Rex very easily is the single most famous dinosaur that's ever lived, okay? So if anybody ever makes a time machine, make sure to go back and tell the Tyrannosaurus they lived primarily around river and forest valleys in the United States, or what is the United States now, North America. So make sure to go back and tell the dinosaur, like, hey, you're gonna be the most famous dinosaur in the entire world. And the T-Rex, I'm sure, would be very happy about that, like, I'm so happy. The T-Rex can't, like, it wants to wipe its tears, but it can't because its arms are too small. It's like, I'm so happy, I'm so great. Oh, and then it'll eat you, but, you know, it'll be happy, all right? So, and of course, this is because of Jurassic Park. You know, Jurassic Park came out in 1993. The book came out earlier than that, obviously. But anyway, yeah, I mean, like, it was cool, right? I mean, you ever watch Jurassic Park? I just watched it, actually, a couple weeks ago, and the special effects really hold up, you know, because they were practical effects, they looked really good, and I can only imagine what it must have been like in the early 90s in the theater, watching Jurassic Park for the first time and seeing this giant dinosaur, the T-Rex, come out of the paddock, and it's just like, roars! And Grant and everybody are like, don't move. Its vision is based on movement, which is pretty bullshit. I'm pretty sure it was even bullshit back then in the 90s, but yeah, their vision was not based on movement. That was something ridiculous. No, they probably had pretty good vision, to be honest with you. Here is one debate, though, about T-Rexes, and that's whether they were a predator, like an actual apex predator that would go after their prey, or they were more of a scavenger that would wait until other dinosaurs would kill their prey, or they would wait until like a carcass, like a vulture, and then they would just scavenge, okay? And it seems like the general premise for right now is in fact that they were both, okay? So they were like opportunistic in that perspective right there. So yeah, I mean, the things were giant and they could run up to 20 miles an hour and they had razor teeth. Their teeth, the largest T-Rex tooth ever found was a foot long, so 12 inches. So, I mean, this thing was obviously a killing machine. Like, it was really good at that, right? But it also was probably very opportunistic with, like, you know, if it was like scavenging, if there was a big pile of like dead dinosaur, it would probably just take advantage of that as well. Another big debate involving T-Rexes, whether or not they had feathers. So obviously, Jurassic Park popularized the idea that it was more like lizard-like, and so it didn't have feathers. And it's like, no, they probably did have feathers. And so I looked up this, and this is actually interesting. I didn't think I would find this fact. This is probably the most interesting fact that I found about the T-Rex today. And I would also, because this is such a famous dino, and so much has been written about it, and so many people talk about that, leave your T-Rex facts below, because I'm sure you have a lot of them as well. But the idea now, the general consensus in the community, is that T-Rex babies, like infants, were covered with feathers, but they might have very well lose their feathers, you know, as they grow older. Because it did seem rather contradictory, because it's like, oh, they did have feathers, they don't have feathers. And it's just like, how do you... But it's just like, no, it seems like some specimens did in fact have feathers, but they might have been like younger T-Rexes, and the older ones did not have feathers. So there might have been a situation there. Of course, T-Rexes and raptors and stuff are, you know, the distant ancestors of like modern day birds. So that would make sense there. They can live up to 30 years, which I think something there is actually in Jurassic Park, because Jurassic Park came out in the early 90s, and then Jurassic World came out in like 2015, and that was like, you know, like 25 years or something since, and the book was even earlier, of course. So it might have been a situation like the T-Rex was like old, and they mentioned that, like, oh, the T-Rex is like an old girl living in the, you know, living in the Jurassic World, you know, from the old park. So I guess that makes sense. They lived in like 30 years. 43 feet high and over 7.5 tons. So, yeah, but it can't see you unless you move. So it's like, yeah, I mean, evolutionarily, that just doesn't even make any sense. But yeah, that's what I have for you for T-Rexes. If you want to know more about them, they're all over the place, guys. It's the damn T-Rex. So I'm going to sprinkle some other really popular dinos throughout Dinosaur Facts. But for a while, I just wanted to tackle this one because it was like the big daddy or big mommy when it comes to, you know, dinosaurs and stuff. So we'll go through some more obscure ones, you know, as we continue. Also, one more thing. I keep forgetting to do this, but all right. So down in the description of this video, there is a new P.O. Box address for my fan mail. Okay, so if you want to send me fan mail, go ahead, check it out in the description below. So if you have any fan mail that you've been sitting on for a while and just waiting for me to tell you, there it is. Sorry for the delay. All right, well, with that being said, I think that's everything I have to say. Barry, you have anything to add? Barry, this is neither the time and the place for your shit, okay? I'll see you later, guys. Bye.